bizarre territory. And so, when Coleman published his book Mysterious America in 1983, he, piggybacking the popularity of the infamous Bermuda Triangle, christened the area of weirdness the Bridgewater Triangle. Thus cemented in paranormal infamy, other researchers turned their eyes to the triangle. And so it was that by consulting regional archives and speaking with local people, an even deeper well of anomalous activity was uncovered. Stretching beyond Coleman's original limitations, other sorts of paranormal testimonies, including those of phantom hitchhikers, centuries-old curses, and even zombies, were linked to the original reports of UFOs and cryptids. This was not just a place for aliens and Bigfoot, it was, so it seemed, a place for everything unexplained. In the words of the Boston writer and Bridgewater Triangle specialist Christopher Balzano, it's a Pandora's box, with anything that you want to be in the triangle being in the triangle. Perhaps the most well-known area within the Bridgewater Triangle is Hockomock Swamp, the largest vegetated freshwater wetland in Massachusetts. At just under 17,000 acres in size, it is undoubtedly a vast natural area, being, according to the state's Department of Conservation and Recreation, home to at least 13 rare and endangered species. And according to Fort Hill researchers, the densely wooded swamp might just conceal one more uncommon creature, Bigfoot. After all, during the 1970s and 1980s, there were, in the words of cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman, all kinds of sightings of Bigfoot in the wetland, extending into several towns in the area, including Bridgewater itself, as well as Easton, Raynham, and Taunton. Parts of the swamp overlap residential areas, as well as major highways, meaning that some of the most compelling and consistent stories relating to the Bridgewater Triangle can be said to have come from this location. For example, an article from the Boston Magazine, dating to April 1980, describes how several townspeople reported encountering a tall, furry, man-like creature in the Elm Street, Bridge Street area of Raynham. Intriguingly, these sightings are said to have not merely come from different people, but also different times, suggesting that some manner of ape man was active in the area over an extended period. Another often cited incident dates to 1970, when a coalition of local police and state police supposedly attempted to track down a bear that had been causing panic in the Bridgewater area. However, according to Coleman, who alleged in a 2013 documentary interview to have spoken to some of the individuals involved in the hunt, the animal was no bear at all, but instead represented a classic Bigfoot case, with the disruptive animal said to have been very unusual.
Yeah, macaroni, look, a bowl right there, get some noodles.
As well as on all fours. Of course, one could very easily dismiss this as what it was originally alleged to have been, a bear, with the carnivorous mammals known to be able to stand on two legs. Black bears, for example, have experienced a population boom in the state of Massachusetts in recent decades, with them standing anywhere between 5 and 6 feet tall when upright, making them a likely candidate for many supposed Bigfoot sightings in the area. And yet, that said, it is intriguing how outdoorsmen, and thus the sorts of people one might expect to be very comfortable with wetland wildlife, have come forward alleging strange occurrences within the Hockomock Swamp. According to Chris Pittman, a Massachusetts-based paranormal investigator and amateur archaeologist familiar with the Bridgewater Triangle mythology, some of the best evidence of strangeness centers on those claims of uncomfortableness within the swamp, with even the most experienced hunters and trappers alleging to have felt the startling and unearthly feeling of being watched when out in the wetland. One such witness is said to have been a man called John Baker, who, like his father and grandfather before him, spent his nights out in the pitch black of the swamp, running trap lines for muskrat. One particular night in the early 1980s, when working from his canoe on a section of the Hockomock River just a mile or so from his West Bridgewater home, the experienced trapper realized something was following him. Interviewed by Boston Herald journalist Ed Hayward in April 1998, Baker supposedly knew whatever was following him wasn't a human because of how it smelled. Passing by him, it smelled like skunk, musty and dirty, like it lived in the dirt. He also claimed that it was big. Catching sight of it in the shadows, it was a man-beast, some manner of hair-covered giant, which strode over the thin crust of swamp ice only a few yards ahead of him. My heart was up in my throat, Baker told the journalist who interviewed him. In all his years of working in the swamps, he had never seen anything like it, and could not offer an explanation as to what it had been, even all those years later. Another credible witness is said to have been a police officer who, whilst on patrol, was scared to death when the back of his car was lifted from the ground.
And then I have more juice right there.
Again, and particularly chilling, is a claim made by Carl Stewart,
There was no
a
milk.
Bridgewater resident who, as a child,
That was coffee
1970,
creamer.
entered the swamp with a group of
It
friends.
said milk on
It
it.
was a winter
It's coffee
day,
creamer.
and the school children pushed into the wilderness exploring. When they were about a mile in, they, so Wood alleged, caught a glimpse of a
It's gone.
huge, hairy man lurking
It was
in
empty.
the
There's a big
overgrowth.
thing of juice right there.
Thoroughly frightened, the children screamed and ran, not stopping until they were back on the road and out of the wetland. A few years later, in 1978, another
Now you're
man
just
called
digging in the
Joseph
trash
DeAndre
just to be gross.
claimed to have encountered a similarly described tall and shaggy-haired ape man walking in the woods near Broad Street in Bridgewater. He and a friend were close to a body of water known as Clay Banks Pond, a location slightly beyond the perimeter of the Hockomock Swamp, which itself has been connected to Bigfoot sightings. An amateur investigator interested in Native American Sasquatch mythology, DeAndre claimed to have been searching for unusual, oversized footprints at the time when he saw what appeared to be the Sasquatch creature of legend. According to his testimony, it had long, dark brown hair all over its body and walked slowly down a hill on the other side of the pond. By the time his friend turned to look, it had vanished. Perhaps the strangest detail of this story is that DeAndre claimed to have been instructed by some manner of voice to turn around and catch sight of the creature. Speaking in a documentary film about his sighting, he was clear to state that he does not usually hear voices, but for whatever reason
take
on this
pictures.
occasion he did, with the consequences being profound.
My
Another
camera
ape man
is not
testimony
great.
again dates to the autumn of 1980, when two friends, Mark St. Louis and Peter Bloomberg, were paddling through the swamp on Lake Winnikin. They reportedly spotted something strange on an island in the lake, a smallish orange orangutan-like creature on two legs. They beached their canoes so as to search for what they had seen,
Nope.
but were unable to find anything. All this considered, it is clear that the swamp has a rich reputation in regards to sightings of bipedal ape creatures.
No?
And such testimonies can be said to become all the more significant when one considers the name of the swamp, with Hockomock being
Fucking
related
upset
to
that
the
nobody
Algonquin
went with
word
you
for
to go
devil
buy that
or
piece of
evil
shit.
spirit, meaning the wilderness
Nobody
area at the
ever
heart of
said,
the Bridgewater
hey,
Triangle is
Far
commonly
from the
referred to as
mid-90s
the
in
place
the
where
late
spirits
2010s
dwell.
is not worth
Not
any
only
number
that,
of thousands
even
of
beyond the
dollars.
confines of the primeval wetland, there have been reports
Fucking
of
pisses me
various
off
other
that
cryptid creatures.
People at the
2
used
years
car sale
before
companies
DeAndre's
go,
ape-man sighting,
yeah, we're
in
gonna sell this car for
1976,
8 times
some
what its
manner of
KBB value
human
is,
black
and
hellhound
with it broke
was
as
blamed
fuck.
for the vicious deaths of a pair of ponies. The black dog, so it is claimed, even evaded being shot at after weeks of panic. The area was thrown into such fear of the beast that school children had to be kept indoors during recess, and home and local business owners armed themselves in the case of an encounter. Eventually, the ominous black hound is said to have disappeared entirely, with it even posited that it left to another dimension. More recently, on the 14th
Sell
of
it.
July 2009,
Sell it.
a man and his girlfriend were driving along Route 140 just outside of Freetown when they saw what they described as a large brown hair-covered man standing up from a crouched position on the side of the two-lane highway. When they contacted police about the sighting, the department revealed that they had received several similar reports from other concerned citizens and were thus sending state troopers to investigate. Sensational reports of thunderbirds, giant black snakes, mystery cats, and even phantom panthers have also come from the Bridgewater Triangle over the past several decades. And the strangeness continues when one investigates the area's UFO sightings. Indeed, it can be argued that some of the Bridgewater Triangle's most famous incidents relate to the appearance of strange, quite possibly extraterrestrial lights and even craft in the night sky. In the 1970s, there was something of a flap in terms of UFO activity within the triangular region. Many reports of lights in the sky were made in the summer of 1978.
I feel like that would be a distraction to
Another spike in sightings came the following spring, with perhaps the most spectacular dating to the 23rd of March, when two WHDH radio news reporters, Jerry Lopes and Steve Sprazier, witnessed an unidentified flying object whilst driving close to the Raynham dog track. Described by Sprazier as a really bright light, it first appeared over the tree line. Getting closer and bigger, it eventually revealed itself to be in the shape of an arrow, or as Lopes has described it, similar to a baseball home plate. As the strange craft passed overhead, the two men were utterly dumbfounded, unable to determine what it was. It had a series of lights on it, some manner of sparking cord hanging down from it, and was unmistakably massive, perhaps the width of 5 747s wing to wing. Sensationally, it is said to have flown so close to the men that Lopes felt as though he would have been able to have thrown a rock at it. After hovering for a minute or two over a nearby field, the craft flew off and disappeared from sight. Over the next week or so, others in the area came forward claiming to have witnessed the same giant arrow-shaped object, and so the two men decided to share their testimonies as well. Decades later, they both stand by what they saw that night in March 1979 as something otherworldly. And this consistency of belief is all the more impressive when one considers Jerry Lopes' military background. An Air Force veteran who has been around a number of different planes, he knew that what he and his colleague were looking at that night was like nothing he had ever seen before. The craft was, so he expressed in a 2013 interview, not one of ours. And so, whose was it?
$50.
Such is a question that many others within the triangular region have asked, including diners at a restaurant in Rehoboth. In 1973, they allegedly discovered two large, perfectly round circles imprinted in the dirt behind the building after the establishment suffered a power cut. It was subsequently claimed that a UFO, which had supposedly caused the strange circular markings in the dirt, had been responsible for the anomaly. And things coming from the sky can be said to have somewhat of a legacy in the Bridgewater Triangle. Eerily, some 30 years before, in 1942, a local newspaper reported that objects had descended from the sky down into the Freetown forest, described as looking somewhat like parachutes, but without UFOs associated with them. Police were forced to search the woods after numerous locals came forward with identical testimonies. Nothing was found, with the army being forced to assure local communities that they would not be involved in the incident in any way. Then, earlier still, in 1908, two undertakers, rather atmospherically driving a carriage on Halloween night, supposedly observed a strange lantern-like light in the sky. More recently,